couple things are obvious. One is that there's still intense interest in LSA, and the people, well, first of all, first day was about as crowded as I've ever seen on the first day of the show.
It was the best Thursday we've ever had. There's no doubt about that. They packed in. Of course, part of that might be that they're good weather readers too, and Friday it was going to rain, so Thursday they came. Friday was a good day starting maybe 10 o'clock in the morning. They were a little slow coming in, but we filled up pretty well that day too. Today's been gangbusters. Parking lot full. Not as many fly-ins today, but it's been windy, low ceilings. So,
what is your observation on the year just passed and looking forward for LSA? Where are we at?
I'd call it maturing. I think that if you look over the 7 shows that we've had, from a little bitty show at the beginning until now, the quality of aircraft, the quality of other associated items, the quality of businesses, I think the whole industry is maturing. I would also say that there's some distance to go in a few areas, but I'm glad to see some initiatives between Llama and some others to move forward and try to spur that.
Any high points so far? Anything that really stands out from this year's event, or at least from your experience with getting ready for this event?
Well, one of the good things is that the rotorcraft people came down in a little bit more strength, and they say next year we're going to be here in big strength. So that's very positive for us. And you may have noticed our exhibits, particularly for indoor exhibits, have changed substantially. All the inside exhibits in one area, it looks professional, it attracts a crowd, it appeals to exhibitors. So that's a big change for us. Costs more, but you have to do what you have to do.
Well, certainly it seems the interest maintains. We've been talking, though, for a long time that we expected at some point that a fair amount of this industry was going to disappear, and that there was going to be at some point a drawdown to the quote-unquote serious players versus the folks and the mom and the pops who probably couldn't hang on that long. But it hasn't happened yet, although we see signs now that it may actually be in the works. Good, bad, and different. What's your thoughts on all that?
Well, people have been predicting the end of the world for a long time, but it never quite comes. Sure, there's going to be some shakeout, but on the other hand, there are new companies coming into the business. We've got people here at Sebring, 1 or 2 man operation with a couple of wives helping out, and they're building airplanes, have been, and seem to be successful. Tom Carr with the Excalibur, for instance. I just don't see them all drying up and going away, even though I think the economy would say maybe they should. But, they keep hanging in there, and the economy will get better, and more planes will be sold, and so on. I don't know if any planes have been sold except for 2. Pipistrel, motor glider, announced to me, or told me yesterday, that he had received 2 $15,000 deposits since the show started here. I really haven't talked to many about that. I don't, because I think whatever I'd get would be very anecdotal and maybe not very meaningful as far as how many have been sold or so on and so forth. American legend says we don't sell planes here. We sell planes at Sun and Fun from the contacts we make here.
Integra Release 9 sets a new standard with the easiest to use pilot interface in all of general aviation. Access to any of Release 9's powerful capabilities is as simple as pressing the desired bidirectional page key. Pressing the same key in a desired direction navigates to the clearly labeled tabs with no more guessing as to what a given pilot input would do. Avidyne's Integra Release 9 is the next generation in fully integrated flight deck technology, and the easiest to use page and tab user interface is just one of the many benefits designed to make your flying easier and safer.
Well, we've actually talked to a couple of the vendors on the inside. One of them, the Mach 5 headset rep, basically said he sold everything he had.
Yes, that's very true. I heard that also. And I haven't found any vendors who said, gee, it wasn't very good. No. We've had Kit Fox come in all the way from Idaho, and I said, coming back next year, and he said, gee, it's been an awful good show. I'd really like to bring 3 planes, but it's 2,500 nautical miles. Yeah, I think I'll be back,
Especially for the island hop. I think he liked that.
Well, that's a good idea, that they're putting on behind this, a little hop around Florida with a number of aircraft. Some initiative and some imagination by some exhibitors or businesses. Yeah.
Well, there is some of that. But still, so much of the industry really has to understand that to be in the business of aviation, you still have to be in the business of business, to coin the phrase that Dave Jewell uses all the time.
Mm-hmm. I think that's correct. But I think that's part of maturing that I talked about. People sometimes feel like if they're pressing their customer too hard, they'll drive him off. On the other hand, they have to press hard enough to get an identity, get a contact, get a way to keep going with them after everybody leaves Sebring.
For this year's event, what changed? What upgrades did you bring to the event this year? And more important, as this event progresses, we're in day 3 of 4 days. What are you looking at for the future?
Well, the biggest single change we've made this year is having the FAA run the control tower. In the past, we had a contract control tower, a small operation relatively. This year, we have a much more robust operation with the FAA, and they are controlling both the light sport operation and as well as the itinerant GA that's coming in and out. And I was very concerned about this at the outset. Will our pilots react negatively? Will they not want to fly? Will the air traffic control people find difficulties with us? And so far, it's worked out very, very well. I've heard just minor issues from some pilots, actually 2 pilots. I've found very positive issues with 2 pilots. It's kind of a wash there, and ATC seems to be happy with us and with our community of light sport flyers. So that's important too.
Where do you go from here?
More, bigger, better. Try to find places to put more exhibits, and I could expand a little bit next year, but we can't go too far with the same footprint. We're looking in the long term probably to relocate to another part of the airport.
I was wondering about that.
But that takes a development of infrastructure, that takes some investment and those kinds of things. But at some point, we'll see the airport developing infrastructure around the other side of the runway, building more taxiways out in that direction. There'll be more geography. Maybe we can do our own campgrounds, our own parking lots, our own area where we're not so competitive with other activities on the airport.
Freedom through control. Cirrus has completely reinvented the personal aircraft and the entire experience of owning a personal aircraft. It's a bold new take on private aviation that we call Cirrus Flying 2.0. You set the schedule. You chart the course. You're in control.
Do you see LSA's basic definition right now being able to withstand the influence at this point that people are trying to put on the FAA?
As far as the technicalities of the rules, I'm really the wrong guy to answer. I run a show. I try to do the best I can do. If they change the rules, I'll modify the show as needed to accommodate those rules. It's a gangbusters segment of aviation. It's the only one that's really growing, in my opinion. We had Craig Fuller down from AOPA, went away saying AOPA is going to be more involved here. So that's a bright light, too. When you get people of that caliber and level of thought interested in what you're doing, it shows that not necessarily the Sebring show, but the LSA community is going to be heard.
Some of the more popular regional fly-ins are having a really tough time in this economy surviving, and yet Sebring each year continues to grow even through the last couple of years of quote-unquote economic downturn. Is it possible that a considerable part of our future from a standpoint of being able to market products and draw people in is going to be in more dedicated, targeted shows, not just by region, but by subject like LSA?
Well, it may be, and there is another LSA show in Mount Vernon, Illinois every year, and Chris is growing that show, we tried to help him as best we could a couple of years ago to get started. But the other thing is this. The regional shows that you talk about, most of them are businesses with paid staff and fringe benefits and cars and expense accounts and those kinds of things. We're an organization totally of volunteers, no paid staff, and so we can survive on a little bit lower budget. We charge less for the booths. We charge less for admissions, but we get a lot of help too. People recognize, and the community recognize, that we're not a big money outfit. So they'll work with us on advertising rates. They'll work with us on those kinds of things that help us continue to be there. We want to be able to have a venue that our sector, light sport, can be well represented. They can demonstrate their wares. They can sell to their products. We can get people to our county and on our airport, and that was why we did it. It's an economic development tool to bring business to the airport, bring business to the county. And that's why we all volunteer to do this.
Well, as always, we've been doing these for quite a while now. We've really enjoyed the show and the process. And from our standpoint, it's been a very accessible show and a very easy show to work in. So we appreciate that. We'll look forward to seeing you next year.
Okay, good. Thanks, Jim.